Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. CFO podcast. Today, my guest is Monica Satake. She has a company called True North Consulting in the Boise area that helps companies with compliance as far as OSHA and those types of things go. I'm going to outro to her and let her talk to us a little bit more about how she got into the business, introduce herself, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share about my journey. So where I'm at now. My business is called True North Training and Consulting, and it's primarily dental consulting. Like you said, I go in and do OSHA and patient safety training in offices. I travel around and do some lecturing and help with policy writing and that kind of thing.
How did you get into this? Tell us a little bit about how you started.
Yeah.
I'd like to know your career journey. I think we always find that kind of interesting. It gives a lot more merit to why you are doing what you're doing and why that became important.
I grew up in rural Idaho, not far from where you're at. You're in Eastern Idaho, correct?
I'm in Pocatello, actually.
Yeah, I graduated from Kimberly High School with a graduating class of 44, so go Bulldogs. When I graduated, I went straight to Boise State. I was going to go into psychology for some various reasons, and I did not have great study habits at BSU my first year. I thought I could pass the classes without actually attending and without studying. Yeah. And I got a really poor grade my first year, poor GPA my first year, and I was put on academic probation. So my second semester, I had to take the courses all over again. I had a dorm mate in the dental assisting program at Boise State, and she needed an x-ray patient. And so I went in and was her x-ray patient. I liked how hands-on the PTE/CTE program was at Boise State, and that it was only a year program because I was studying with academics at the time. So I ended up taking that class the very next year, and I was a peer tutor within my class. And that ended up helping me later on, which we can talk about later. But then I graduated, and then I went on to earn a Bachelor of Science in Education from the University of Idaho with a summa cum laude and Master of Health Education from Idaho State University. So it was kind of redemptive after being put on academic probation early on to be able to rally and do better with my education.
Were you living in Boise when you did the U of I degree?
Yes, I took it from the satellite.
And then were you living in Boise when you did the Idaho State University degree?
Yeah, I had an online program. And a fun fact is that my advisor actually came out of retirement to be my advisor because it was kind of a new program. It's kind of parallel with the MPH, the Masters of Public Health program. And so he came out of retirement to be my advisor and then passed away a couple of years later. So it was one last hurrah for him.
Who was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, his name was Galen Lewis.
I don't think I know him.
Yeah, he was kind of a local celebrity. He did some local acting and some jazz guitar work. He was a musician locally.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and then I worked in oral surgery and periodontics and general dentistry early in my career. Those years gave me a front row seat to how practices function or dysfunction when it comes to compliance and safety training. I started teaching expanded functions back in 91, a couple years after I graduated from the dental assisting program at Boise State. And I taught the Selland College of Applied Technology. And I traveled all over from Southern Idaho to Northern Idaho, testing expanded functions for dental assistants. So that was in the early 90s. And then it wasn't until 2007 I began teaching full-time back in the program that I graduated from at Boise State University. And then later at the College of Western Idaho in a CODA accredited program that I realized, there was some inconsistencies that existed on how dental teams were trained in things like OSHA, HIPAA, and basic sterilization protocols. I saw the gap and I thought, if no one is coming to fix this at the practice level, maybe I can help.
Okay, that's interesting because I don't know anybody that's like, there's a lot of consultants out there, like a lot of dental consultants, right? And they do A to Z thing. I think you're the first one I've talked to that says, I'm going to be the OSHA person, which I think is kind of neat. So talk more about the problem that you saw. And I imagine you still see that problem. Is it getting better or worse in your?
The concept of a consultant in OSHA and patient safety isn't new, but it is fairly new in the Idaho area. When I was teaching, we would have students go out and do clinical site. They worked in clinical sites for part of their internships. And it was my job to go out and make sure that they were completing competencies and following whatever needed to happen for graduation completion. And oftentimes they would come back and have a private conversation with me about things that they saw in the dental office that didn't align with what we were teaching in a CODA accredited program. And so when my students would get ready to kind of head towards graduation, I would say, keep all of your work, keep all of your paperwork, all of the stuff that we've done this semester, because once they find out that you have this experience, they'll probably put you in that position. It happened a lot. They would call me back and say, how do I help my office do this? I was already consulting in a way because I was helping students that were hired on. Then it became more and more. Finally, in 2019, there's a national board called Dental Assisting National Board, and I write test questions for them for national certification exams. One of my friends was a consultant, and I saw her doing this, and I thought, I think I would really like to do that. So 2019, I launched True North Training and Consulting.
How did you come up with that name, True North? I'm struggling to see the fit of OSHA and True North. Can we decipher that part?
Yeah, I can. Well, I'm a believer. I believe in Christ. And my business started off as True North because I always come back to service. True North, it's really easy to get spun up in things when you don't know how to start with OSHA, or you don't know how to start with patient safety. It's important to have an anchor. And so, especially in 2019, remember I started at the end of 2019 and 2020 when the earth spun off its axis, medical world and the dental world. And so, I always tell people that I'm here to help them navigate these things. Part of my logo has a compass. And so for me, it has a different meaning probably than what I present for my clients. But I really always do try and help them navigate things. And when it comes to the safety and standards, because it's hard to interpret things sometimes. And I want to help them do that and empower them to do that.
So it's kind of based on one of your deepest core values. Basically.
Yep, exactly. It's my mission.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm thinking of this t-shirt that I saw on Amazon. We'll see if we can insert it here.
Okay.
You're making me think of this right now. It's like, it has one of those kind of like old Catholic versions of the Savior. Okay? Oh. And he's kind of peeking to the side. And then on the caption on the right, it says, I know you didn't floss. And I just think that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So you're making me think of that.
He sees everything.
Yeah, exactly. So when I don't floss and brush my teeth, I think, oh, he knows.
Yeah.
I got to get back in there and get it done.
For real. That's awesome. We'll have to get shirts like that, right?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I'll send you a link to it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, okay, second question for you. When you're done certifying a company, I mean, this is interesting. I'm kind of joking with you right now, but I'm kind of not. Like, when they're done, do they get like, a certification? You got your picture on there. You're like doing a thumbs up saying they're OSHA certified by Monica. Because I'm thinking, if I saw something like that, that actually might maybe feel good as a patient. Yeah. If I see something that says, I come in here and I certify this place once a year, every other year or something, that they're following best practices and standards and cleaning and whatnot, it might make me feel better as a patient, that I might get some kind of nasty infection because they're cutting corners to save costs, because things are getting expensive right now for dentists with staff, labor, and supplies. So I don't know if that's something that you do or have thought about, but you haven't.
Yeah, I do. I have. So it's not that they would be OSHA certified necessarily. And I want to be really careful about that word, because there are a lot of people saying that they're OSHA certified, and that's a whole different, they're OSHA trained. And so part of what I do, well, first of all, let me back up just a little bit and talk about something you asked about earlier, kind of the early days of doing this and how I started. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the obstacles and then get to what you just asked.
I want to know the whole journey.
Yeah. I would say exactly what you said. Idaho hadn't really had anyone. There are supply reps that go in and set up and do a 1 hour lunch and learn, but no one had done what I was doing. The biggest challenge was earning trust. I wasn't just an educator. I was trying to change behaviors related to worker and patient safety, exactly what you're talking about. How are the patients going to be safe? And are we just checking boxes? That meant disrupting comfort zones. And again, some practices saw this as a checkbox, and once we do this, we're done. But it is an ongoing thing, especially where policies, procedures, and standard operating procedures come into play. It's ongoing documentation and behavior. I approached it as a cultural shift. I was the first one to do this at a grassroots level in Idaho. Another early obstacle was navigating the federal regulations in 2020 when things were going berserk and state-specific board mandates. Translating that into actionable, non-intimidating training for busy dental teams, because dental teams are so busy. And for a lot of them, it's just one more thing they have to do in their day, a necessary thing, but it's just one more day. So I would help build their customized SOPs and their training modules. And I even created mock inspections and would go in and watch them and say, if I were an OSHA inspector, this is what I would have seen. And it made compliance feel less like punishment and more like empowerment. And so then what they would do now is there are a couple different things. I go out and do lectures for things like dental associations, dental hygiene associations. I talk about this, but I also have a passion for, and we may get into that later and maybe not, but identifying human trafficking in dental offices. And so I go out into dental hygiene associations, dental associations, and I really like going into dental offices because I feel like the clients feel more comfortable talking in a private area like that about, hey, this is what we're seeing. Yeah. How do we address it? And we come up with a plan. We have 5 key points that maybe we'll address right away, understanding that's not the end. At the end of this, so hygienists and dentists have to be licensed in the state of Idaho. So they're required to have 30 oral health related CEUs per year. I have worked with the dental board in Idaho. So most of my trainings are about 3.5 hours, and I leave time at the end for Q&A because OSHA requires that. So they get 3 CEUs from me. So at the end of the training, they get elements of training list of things that we covered. And then each of them gets a certificate. They're not certified anything, but they get a certificate of completion. And I make it customized for them with the date and everything, saying that they sat in on this training that had OSHA and patient safety, and it has this many CEUs. And even for dental assistants, even though they're not registered, or I should say they're not required to be licensed in Idaho, I still tell them to put it in the professional development folder because it means something.
Yeah, I know people like that. So do other states besides Idaho?
I can do other states besides Idaho. It takes some time to look into their state specific regulations and stuff. I haven't done a lot of out of state training, but I can.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I can see a lot of value in that. So you said the human trafficking thing, I wasn't expecting that. So
I saw your eyebrows raised when you. So for 10 years, I was in a human trafficking ministry where I was on the side of it where people, when they would get rescued, we would help provide clothing and stuff for them. And then if they had kids at a really young age, we would help teach them how to be parents because what they experienced was not parenting. In Idaho, human trafficking is huge. That might surprise you, but it's huge. 85% of the trafficking in Idaho is familial trafficking, meaning they're being trafficked by their family members for drugs and whatever else. Right. So most of the time, a trafficker is not going to take their victim to a medical place because they'll get found out right away, likely. But they will take them into a dental office if their front teeth are busted out for you fill in the blank reasons. Yeah. They have to get their facial features taken care of, their teeth taken care of so they can get them back out to work. And so, yeah. And so we train, I speak to dental offices. I went to North Idaho last year and spoke to their dental hygiene association up there. Interestingly enough, within 2 years of that, I can't remember exactly the timeline, but there was a window truck driver that actually found a woman on the side of the road, rolled in, wrapped up in a towel, and her head was shaved. And he came back around and found her. She had been trafficked and just dumped along the side of the road. and he called law enforcement and they came and got her. Interestingly enough, he became a voice and started training people for what to look for with long haul driving.
I just wasn't expecting that. But it does make sense. If people need medical care, they got to go somewhere, right? And then
Yes.
maybe a dentist, maybe watch too much Better Call Saul or whatever, but they use the veterinarian. So I'm not attacking the veterinarians, but that's who they went to in the show. The cash-based veterinarian is who they went to get their stuff fixed. So that's really super interesting.
Well, the interesting thing, at one point, we talked a lot about domestic violence and mandated reporters within dental. I had a training one time where I was talking about human trafficking. One of the attendees in the discussion actually recognized after she went back to work that one of her coworkers was the victim of domestic violence and potentially being trafficked. And so it brought awareness. And honestly, when we're sitting in trainings like that or having conversations, a lot of times the hygienists or whoever I'm speaking with will say, oh man, I got to get a hold of my kids' social media and figure out what's going on there, because they prey on kids, they prey on the vulnerable, and social media, it's a big deal for the trafficking community.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. Okay, so let's pivot back to OSHA.
Okay.
And in your training, take us through a mock walkthrough. I've hired you. You're going to do a mock walkthrough through my practice and give me kind of maybe the top things that you see. I don't know if it's 3 things, 5 things. Tell me the things that you typically see a practice do that OSHA might slap them on the hand for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so remember, OSHA pertains to the worker, and patient safety would be on the patient side of it. Some of those things meld together. And so oftentimes, a precursor to this is oftentimes I'll have somebody say, who would I call? Or I'll be talking to the state board and they'll say, people are calling us about OSHA violations or complaints. And the state board is not who you would call for that. That would be for patient safety. I like to kind of parse that out, but also note that they do kind of meld together, those two topics. So if I'm walking in to do a mock inspection, I really want them to just work they get nervous when I come in. I'm like, listen, I actually started off with my business name was True North Training and Compliance. I changed it about 3 years ago because it gave an indication that I had an authority that I really didn't have. And I didn't want people to be intimidated by that. So I changed it to True North Training and Consulting, make it a little more friendly. But I'm into an office, and the first thing I would do is look around to see if they had the appropriate labeling for their staff. I would look to see if they had in their sterilization area, if they had labels on their ultrasonic machine, which is a machine they use to throw dirty instruments in, and it cleans the instruments. I would look to see if they had that labeled with what chemicals are in it, because it came out of the original container and went into a machine to work. I'd also look to see if there was a biohazard sticker on it, because it's kind of the cesspool of the office. Then I would look around the office again, and I would see if they had the required labor posters from OSHA. I would look at their process for washing their scrubs, because they're not supposed to be taken outside of the office unless it's with a company that has been trained on how to handle contaminated scrubs. So I would look to see if their storage for their dirty scrubs were in the break room where people eat lunch. I would look to see what kind of container they were putting it in. Does it have a biohazard sticker because they're contaminated? I'd also look at and see if their washing machine that they put them in has a biohazard sticker. So those are just some brief examples of the labeling. I would also walk around to see if they're wearing safety glasses during patient care, if they're wearing a mask, and if they're wearing the appropriate scrubs and exam gloves. After patient care, when everything's contaminated and the sharps are laying around, I would check to make sure that they are getting rid of the sharps at chairside in a sharps container and wearing different gloves than exam gloves to handle the contaminated sharps.
Okay. So that's a lot of stuff. So I have a couple questions for you. During COVID, it was kind of hard to get stuff.
Sure.
And so maybe all this, the perfect world, having all the masks and all that, you maybe get it today, but I actually have forecasting that getting supplies is going to be difficult. It's maybe totally wrong. It's just my gut feel that supplies are going to get hard to get. I don't know if it's this year, next year, a couple years. That's just my gut feel. So let's say I can't get all the safety supplies I need.
Mhm.
What would you do in a situation? I realize it may not be OSHA approved, but now it's worried. What should people do if they can't get supplies? What are some safety precautions they should do in worst case scenarios? I'd like to hear your goal on that. Hey everyone, Carl with Dr. CFO. Hope you're doing well today. I wanted to share with you our new Office Superhero Workbook for 2025. It's not actually just a book. If you're an owner, there's an assignment that your office manager needs to complete in the workbook. And then they return this workbook to you to show you all of the wonderful things that they have done or things that they still need to do to make your practice better. Pick one up, reach out to me, carl@drcfo.com, and we'll get one to you. Thanks and have a great day.
Yeah. So there's always good faith effort. So even during COVID, when it was difficult to get masks, if doctors could show that they at least tried to get the masks, every OSHA person is different. So I can't make a blanket statement, but if they could at least see, oh, hey, they tried to order these and they weren't available, that's a good faith effort.
Right.
You saw during COVID, this was kind of cringeworthy at the time because we're always told to take our masks off and throw them away after every patient, which is the indication, but they couldn't get the supplies and came up with creative ways to decontaminate and find alternative ways to get the supplies. We just have to watch for the guidance on that.
Yeah, I really do think it's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like it's going to be hard to get suppliers. I read a book called China RX. Have you read that book?
No, but I understand what you're saying, and I tend to agree with you on it because supply and demand, I mean, there are US-based companies that can supply, and I think perhaps it would be beneficial to start looking that way.
Well, hopefully that's going to change. And I know that's one of the directives of administration it is a security risk. Pharmaceuticals, supplies, even like stuff like vitamin C was coming from China.
Yep.
So, one, do they do a good job? Okay, let's say they do, but if you can't get it, you can't get it. So
right.
More domestic production makes more sense. And like, I know when they did the floods in North Carolina, I had a client calling me and saying, hey, we can't get our IVs. Well, because we have a pharmacy that we own. And it's like, hey, can you get me some IVs from your pharmacy? I didn't realize how much of a problem that was because our pharmacy does more long-term care stuff. But it was just kind of rough. You're going to have to reinvent the wheel and figure out a new way to do it. I mean, there's an opportunity to go a better mousetrap. But I do think that people need to think about alternatives if the option isn't there. So I think that's something that would be interesting for you to do in your side time, come up with Monica's safety rules. If you can't get stuff, I think it's kind of like survival. I think people would find that interesting.
Yeah.
So, I have another question. Let's say I'm a patient in an office. Maybe the dentist won't like me for saying this, but is there some red flags to me as a patient when I walk in, like 2 or 3 that says, this place is not fit for me? I can see the obvious ones. The bathroom's not clean. The windows aren't clean. It hasn't been vacuumed. And I can say that almost every office I've been in has been pretty clean. There was one, it was just filthy. I would never come here. But aside from that, what are maybe your top 1, 2, 3 things that our patient should?
Hand washing.
Okay.
Hospital, any hospital stuff, HAIs, healthcare associated infections. Watch to see if they're washing their hands or using hand sanitizer when they come back in.
Okay.
Are they wearing the same mask for every patient? Because single use, disposable is just that. If they walk into the operatory with a mask on that they just used on the last patient, that's kind of obvious. Okay. You could ask questions like, what's your training? What qualifies you to work safely on me? People are smart. And my personal friends ask me a lot, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, here's the question you want to ask. This is an analogy that a lot of people hate, but it's a true analogy, or a reference, I should say, is that because we don't have any requirements in Idaho for certifications or licensures for dental assistant, we can literally take someone out of a job at Wendy's on Friday and put them in charge of keeping the dental office on Monday. And because of workforce shortage, that is happening a lot. The state of Idaho, the Board of Dentistry, did away with expanded functions a couple years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I don't want to misspeak on that. But it is a requirement that when dentists hire their staff, that they are trained appropriately. That would be a great question to ask. Have you been trained appropriately to do the job that you're performing?
I do work with dentists, and a lot of times they do self-train just because there's a shortage or they can't get them. And sometimes people have good personal hygiene habits, maybe are a good choice. So I was at a restaurant the other day and the guy had a nose ring.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really digging that, and I would not let you serve me food just
Mm-hmm.
because I'm grossed out by seeing the nose ring eating, so I don't know if that causes sanitary risk to us, and I'll be a little bit more honest here. So I can remember many, many years ago, I decided to give blood for the first time. This was like 2002. Who likes getting poked, right? So I'm getting poked, and that's my coworker a question. He goes, "Oh, I can't do it. That's why I'm going to faint or something." I'm like, "Well, you're the wrong person to ask."
Mm-hmm.
So I proceeded, but I asked all these questions. And in that time, I'm not making this up. It really asked, "Did you get a tattoo?
Yeah.
When's the last time you got a tattoo? When's the last time you got a piercing? If you had gotten a tattoo or a piercing in the last year, you couldn't get blood."
Right.
Maybe that's changed, but it's stuck in my brain since then. Right or wrong, I'm wondering, that makes a difference.
I think you're asking about professionalism. Is that correct?
Well, a little bit, but okay, let's go with the professionalism.
So I can, in the course I taught in 91, we weren't allowed to have visible tattoos. We weren't allowed to have face piercings. We weren't allowed to have more than one ear piercing. Even now, the requirement is that you don't have fake fingernails, because if you did a swab around your fingernails and put that on a dish, the bacterial growth would be horrible. They, being the CDC, recommend that you don't wear fingernail polish. If you tried to not hire someone with a tattoo or multiple piercings right now, you'd be hard pressed to find staff because it's so common. But for some, it's a turnoff, and it's a conservative profession, so there are doctors that do have policies against that.
So as a consultant, we're going to go into some numbers for it. If they want to become a cash-based clinic, they're going to market their brand really tight.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be much more scrutiny about how the person looks, just because they're trying to attract a certain client, and it's all about marketing and stuff like that. And so I guess I would just advise people that if you want to move up the food chain, if you will, in your career as a dental assistant, the more professional you look, and you're just going to have more opportunities. And I know that some people are going to like that, but it is true.
Can I piggyback on that for just a minute, Carl? So pet peeve in the consulting arena is all the social media posts that dentists and dental offices post. Brand marketing, like you said, but let's market our infection control. I see marketing posts all the time from people who are in total violation of OSHA and verging on HIPAA violations. And so I don't know if some of the dentists are marketing. I mean, they're posting themselves in the post that they're aware of that, but I don't know if all these doctors are aware, number one, of what's being posted on social media in their name, in their office name, if they don't care. I would hope it's not the second. But I oftentimes will see posts with patients' faces in them, with an assistant working on them, with no safety glasses, no masks. And if OSHA saw that and wanted to pursue that, it would be a direct violation. So I was just talking to one of my colleagues the other day that said, can we just market good patient protection, patient safety, and worker safety? Because sometimes when I did a podcast probably a month ago.
Yeah.
And we were trying to find good stock photos to post within the podcast. And it was really hard to find. So we were talking the other day about doing a retreat where we go into an office and just take like 1,000 pictures that we could share when we're trying to do presentations and stuff. In fact, I'm in the process right now of filming some onboarding videos. We went in and took, 4 hours to film some B-roll stuff in a dental office so that it was the correct PPE.
Okay, that's super interesting to me. I'm always trying to help my practices make more money essentially, or
Yeah.
their numbers, or all those types of things. Of course, patient safety, patient quality, all that stuff is important. But I got to be honest with you, I never really thought about it. I'm going to look at those pictures differently now because they're doing it more for a marketing purpose. But what you're saying is that's really a disconnect from what should be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
It shows that they
I never really thought.
Yeah, and it shows that they're either not being trained properly or not thinking about the impact of the post they're posting. So
Yeah,
it could be
I can see
second
that.
nature. Wearing your PPE while you're working with the patient could be second nature. If you're not wearing it properly, you just didn't really think about, at least speculation, but maybe you just didn't think about like how that was going to go out into the internet.
Well, you do have a point that in reality, that's what's happening. And somebody could come back and say, well, I hope that's not how you really do it. So I think that's actually, I hadn't really thought about that. So I'm going to internalize that for the next little bit because I'm really trying to push people on marketing. And I never thought about like, well, what are you really saying? It just it wasn't taught why. I think it's a very valuable point.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about dental assistants. You're around them a lot. What do you think a dental assistant should be paid when they start?
Isn't that the question?
What are you on the hot seat? Yeah.
I would say that it depends on their experience.
Well, this is a brand new one. They just got pulled out of McDonald's. One day they're working as a dentist.
I always made sure that I did not answer this question because, especially when I was teaching in dental assisting school, because if I said, oh, you should be paid this amount, and then they go out into a smaller office versus a DSO where they, boy, I mean, it's got to keep up with the cost of living for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember when the last time was that I saw a sign at McDonald's, but they're making like $17.50 an hour now at McDonald's. So now the dentists are competing with McDonald's.
It's true. My daughter works at Costco's and the food court.
Yeah.
I want to say she started around 17, 15, 18 bucks an hour. And here's what I didn't know. On Sundays, everybody at Costco's gets time and a half.
Really?
So on Sunday, let's say she's making 18. Well, on Sunday, she's making 27.
Yeah.
And so there's a kid on Sunday. And now Sunday is like payday. I work 8 hours and I get basically paid an extra 4 hours. So Sunday's payday. It doesn't matter the job. I imagine they have some salary people, but if you get paid hourly, as far as I know, it's time and a half.
Nice.
On Sundays. And so it's a real incentive for people, in that case, you feel like it's kind of worth it. So yeah, you're right. They are competing with fast food. I mean, they obviously have the benefit of their job environment, like dental benefits. It's a nicer environment. The hours are more like 8 to 5. Well, those are selling points. From what I'm seeing, the low end is probably 16 to start.
Yeah.
And it's probably closer to 18 to 19. And then it's going up fast from there if somebody has experience. And you're right. I shouldn't put you on the spot to give a number, but I was hoping I was pressed trying to get the question. Give it a shot.
And like I said, the DSOs usually are able to offer a little bit more, but they also have the structure where they have the entry-level dental assistant, then they'll have different levels of dental assistant depending upon their education and their certifications. Right. But the workforce is tough right now.
If I was a dental assistant or anybody in dental, I can't think of a worse place to work than one of these real corporate DSOs. That just does not sound fun to me. I mean, maybe their quality in some areas is better, but I honestly feel like they're kind of ruining the industry because the corporate finance guys are taking a lot of profit out. I think they would argue, no, we're doing this and this. And I know that they're not. I've been around that stuff a lot. So if the DSO guys want to slap my hand, that's fine. I don't care. I've seen a couple that run really well, but most of them seem to have more of a grading profit motive. So maybe they have some trainings. They have a lot of structure, but somewhere they got to make up for that. So I don't know. I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. So, okay, what are the top places in Idaho for somebody to get dental training?
Dental assisting training?
Yeah, exactly.
I would say College of Western Idaho is still good. There are weekend trainings, like little pop-up clinics around that do weekend trainings. And I would really look into those. If I were a dental assistant, I would ask dental offices, go do shadowing and ask, what's the quality of dental assistant that comes out of here? When I was working at the college level, I had to retrain some of those that came out, and they are sometimes spendy. And you usually don't have as many hours, obviously, as a 1-year program. And a dental assistant going into one of those programs doesn't know the questions to ask. So I always tell people when they were asking me about hygiene schools and stuff too, I would say, go interview a couple of dentists, pick like 3 dentists, go to their offices and interview them and ask them, who are you hiring or where are you hiring from? And that's what I would do. A lot of dental programs in Idaho anymore.
I think the College of Eastern Idaho, it's in Idaho Falls. I'm pretty sure they have dental assisting training.
I know they have hygiene, but I haven't looked into that.
I think hygiene is new there. In the last year or so. They have assisting.
That's good.
At Idaho State University, they have, it's not like, I want to say, I'm going off memory here, that they have like this workforce development program. And then they have like dental assisting course. It's like a 8-week or 12-week, something like that. Or I do see a glad opportunity because I do think that the doctors want their people to be trained the best as possible. Sometimes they just lack the time, money, effort to do it because they're so busy. Somebody could come in and say, this is how you be a great dental assistant. I don't know why they were saying no to that. As long as it was reasonable. Their certificate. I think that would benefit. I can't think of too many of them that wouldn't love that, to be honest with you.
I think their motives are pure, but who has the time with turnover rates and work ethic these days to train as many people that come in and out the door as they do, you know?
This podcast is sponsored by Snake River Payroll, your hassle-free solution to all payroll needs. With fast, reliable service, they take care of your payroll so you can focus on what matters most. Snake River Payroll, payroll made simple. Visit srstaff.net today.
Do you have a newsletter that you send out or a monthly, weekly alert like, hey, this is my training, my online training? If you don't have an online training for Idaho dentists, you should really consider that because I think that would be valuable, you know, where people could hear from you on a more regular basis. There was a question I forgot to ask you, and this has nothing to do with dental. Any relation to the BYU coach? Isn't his last name Satake?
I don't know.
Do you have any? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Speak Japanese?
Sorry.
I would guess.
I'm probably going to get in trouble. Let me see.
So while you're doing that, I don't have a newsletter that I send out. My training is by word of mouth. This is call, and a lot of them now are on recall where they call, and it's because I guess in all of this, I forgot to mention that OSHA does require annual training. They require that staff members, in addition to, so there are basically 3 times that a person needs to be trained. So the first time is onboarding before they're even put to any task, because bloodborne pathogens and hazard communications, all the things they are exposed to have to be revealed to them, and they have to have training on those things. The other time is annually. And then if processes change in the office or there's new stuff in the office, they have to be trained on that. It's ongoing. You don't just put a period at the end of it and we're done. And documentation is ongoing as well.
No, okay, that's good to know. I looked it up. His name is spelled a little differently.
Oh, okay.
So anyway.
Maybe not.
I have a couple more questions before we wrap up. So let's say, and I want to ask these in a way that don't get you in trouble. So you don't have to answer, but what I'd like to know, if you were the dental director, if you will, of Idaho, what are 2 or 3 things that you think they should be doing that they're not doing? And what are 2 or 3 things that they are doing that they shouldn't be doing? What changes would you make?
Are you saying dentists?
Well, no, not dentists. I'm talking about maybe OSHA, the field that you're in. What are some things that you think it's like, okay, this is ridiculous, you shouldn't be asking this? What are some things that maybe dentists should be doing to make their place more clean and that they're not? That should be required.
One thing that the dentists should be doing that they're not is taking, I don't want to make this blanket statement again. A lot of dentists, even though they're required to have an annual OSHA training, don't. And I don't think they realize the liability of not having that training. And so I wish that more of them would get on board with doing that and having open communication. And when they identify things that need to be taken care of, changed, whatever, that there would be good communication that way. Again, creating that culture of safety. A lot of the assistants. Most hygienists know the background of things, OSHA and patient safety related, because they're required to be licensed in Idaho. But again, if I go back to hiring a new assistant, if they have no dental background, they don't even sometimes realize that they're going to be working with bloodborne pathogens and could potentially contract Hep B or HIV in their daily routines. So that's important. I would love to see a more consistent opportunity to have, like, sometimes I'll do trainings at supply warehouses. So, for instance, one of the supply houses here has a really great educational room, and I've taught on sharps there and how to be compliant with sharps. Dental unit waterline stuff, I've taught on that. I also probably failed to mention that I still teach in a high school program out in Nampa. I help teach that program. One of my friends is the main instructor, but I help teach her labs and stuff because of ratios. So I do go out and still teach there. Our students that go through that program have learned the fundamentals. They're in a year-long program. They are employable when they're done. And
well, are those sessions recorded? It'd be nice if that stuff was recorded. The best bits were published for other high school students. I get sad that we don't reuse content enough in the state from high schools. I asked you a question at the beginning. Well, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. Okay, so sorry, ISU and Nephi, Boise State. I love Boise State football. We're way into Broncos. My son got a little dog recently, and he named him Zeus. It's a tough little Frenchie. And I go, you should have named him Genty. Because I felt like he got robbed on the whole Heisman thing and everything. Anyway, that aside, I'm not sure I'm a believer in the separation of the ISU, U of I, Boise State thing as far as content goes, because as a taxpayer, at least I should be able to audit the class for free. It should be recorded and put out there for other people to consume because they'll pay for it. That's a way for some of this stuff to be digitized. And with AI now, you can actually condense the content, get it out there quicker, and maybe even get the best bits. So year after year, you can condense this to make the best information so that somebody says, okay, this training is still relevant. You got the new training in these high school lectures. So it might be a condensed version of these lectures that gives top information or reminders. It goes out to all the dental assistants that they're required to watch this 2-hour video or 1-hour video. And then at the end, there's a quiz. And if you pass with an 80% or whatever, you got to pass with a 90%, 100%.
You're proficient.
You can take it as many times as you want until you get it right. I don't really have a problem with that. When I was working at a manufacturing company, we'd have to take hazard materials training and some other training every year. It was exactly the same test every year. So I had my Word document all ready to go with all the correct answers and everything. And you might think, oh, Carl's cheating. Well, I was cheating. But you want to know something? I still had to read it. Yeah. I still had to remind myself of all the right answers. I still had to go through it again. So, who won? They won because they wanted to remind me what the rules were. And every year I go back and read through the rules again. Sometimes I'd be like, oh, I kind of forgot that one. Or, okay, yeah, that one. And sometimes, because it does get bored year after year, I would go through and say, okay, I think this is the answer. Then I look at the real, oops, I got that one wrong. Or, yeah, I got that one right. To make it a little bit fun for myself, to see what I can remember. But at the end of the day, I was still learning and getting better. So I think stuff like that, gamified stuff, is actually, I think, going to be one of the futures of learning. Now, I got questions. So what equipment do you think is have you seen any equipment out there that you think, man, this is the best ultrasound of all time? Everybody needs this one. It cleans the best. Or is there something you think the office should purchase that just naturally makes things, the environment, cleaner?
Yeah.
I'm throwing it out there.
I think what you're saying is the ultrasonic cleaner. Each thing has their unique benefits. If I were talking about sterilizers, one of the biggest things is people like to, because our offices are busy, they like to try and when sterilizers are completely done, meaning they're done sterilizing, but they haven't gone through the drying cycle, sterilizers, they set the packages out to dry. And that's a big no-no because the instruments go through the packaging and they're no longer sterile, they're aseptic. And then they can have this thing called wicking where it pulls whatever is on the counter into the packaging and then it gets on the instruments. So I'm a big fan of sterilizers that do not open until all of the cycles are done. There are a couple of them on the market right now that do that. So there's no room for error in it.
Okay, let's say I had an ultrasonic or a sterilizer and it's 20 years old.
Okay.
Would you say that's too old?
I would ask the manufacturer or the tech. They don't make things to last anymore. That's my personal opinion. I guess it depends on if it's still running. There are things that are outdated, like dry heat sterilizers and that kind of thing. Those are kind of outdated. People still use them. It takes a long time to go through those cycles and stuff. But I mean, if they're not working, they're not working. If they're, like, for instance, a sterilizer, if it's not passing a biological indicator test once a week as directed by the State Board of Dentistry, that needs to go out the door. So there are things that we should be spending money on.
Okay. And the reason I asked the question is dental technology is improving rapidly.
Yeah.
At some point in time, we talked a little bit about podcasting or equipment, and probably every couple of years I'll buy a new camera because, it's better and it does something better and fancier than the last one. And so that's why I asked that question.
Yeah.
So,
well, to answer that question, I would say, like, on the sterilization, I would make sure that your sterilizer is drying your instruments correctly and thoroughly.
Okay, last question. Obviously, I'm trying to help my clients make more money or protect their money. What kind of damages have you seen for people not being OSHA or not being clean? What kind of damages have you seen?
Well, the biggest damage is to the pocketbook because one infraction is $16,000. The last administration their sightings were more rigorous. How do I say that? They were more rigorous, meaning that, for instance, if you went into a dental office, sometimes they could clump together some things, and that would be one citation. It still has to go through a process of whether it was actually a legit complaint or not. The last administration made it an instance by instance. So an investigator could leave a dental office, and instead of it being a $16,000 violation, it was tripled or quadrupled because of the instance by instance.
What kind of fines have you heard being charged and paid? I don't know.
You have to go on the website, look to see, because that's the other thing. It's public. So if somebody here, I don't always know who gets fined and that kind of thing, but all you have to do is go on the OSHA website and it's public information. If it goes through the process and they get a violation, they'll have their office name on there. It's not private information.
That's actually interesting because when I talked about something I as a patient could do, that's another thing I could do is go check out the OSHA website.
Right.
That's super interesting. I haven't actually never done that.
To go back to your question about cleanliness, I am a subject matter expert for dental unit water line. I work closely with one of the companies that does dental unit water line stuff. And 2016, there was a huge case of a young girl in a pediatric dental office, and it was a kind of a DSO type of deal.
Right.
And this young lady had been in for a pulpotomy, which is basically a child's version of a root canal, which means that whatever's in your mouth goes directly into the bloodstream. She started having symptoms after that. To shorten the story, she ended up in the hospital, and more children were having the same symptoms. And this one in particular, I don't know if she was immunocompromised or what exactly happened, but this young girl was, I think, 6 or 7 at the time. Her name is Mimi. And she ended up having to have permanent teeth removed, part of her jaw removed, major IV antibiotics. And she was in the hospital for a long time. And it was because of an infectious disease doctor that happened to be on call a couple of different times when some of these kids were coming in, and she started seeing a pattern. It all led back to the dental unit water lines because they were not being stocked and maintained correctly. I give this scenario in my trainings a lot to show people how important it is, because the dental unit water lines get biofilm in them, and they grow and pieces break off and they go down the tubing and they break off and they adhere and they feed on stuff. And pretty soon you've got the inside of the tubing that is just full of sludge. So then that's being aerosolized over patients and workers who might be immunocompromised. My personal story is that my husband's had a heart transplant. And so he's on immunotherapy. He's immunocompromised for his life. Maybe we don't all know somebody that's had a transplant, but we probably all know somebody that's been going through cancer therapy that has a lowered immune system. Put them in a dental chair, have that aerosolization going and all that stuff that they're breathing in, and it's not good. That's part of the reason why I started working with this company and talking during presentations about this stuff, is because people were getting sick.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
I probably need to wrap this up because of our time. But Monica, you've been awesome to talk to. I can think of at least 2 or 3 things that I'm going to be sharing with my clients out of this conversation. Tomorrow, keeping pictures on the podcast, that's definitely going to come up. The OSHA certifications. We try to talk to them a little bit about, I'm a finance guy, so sometimes I can't do everything, right? I might be reaching out to you. In fact, I will be reaching out to you to learn a little bit more. So tell us the best way to get a hold of you, and we'll definitely put it in the show notes on you too.
Okay.
If you want to just take a second to tell us how to get a hold of you.
So my email is monica.cntc@gmail.com. And my website is www.truenorthtrainingconsulting.com. You were talking about the training and recordings and stuff like that. I do have something that's going to be launching soon, so watch for that on my website. That will be very helpful for your clients too.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I asked about other states because I would like to draft you down to Utah.
Yeah.
Comfortable doing that?
Yep.
Somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast today. And thank you to our guest, Monica, and excellent information and wisdom and everything. And if you want to reach out to her, we'll go ahead and put all the information in the show notes. We'll sign off for this time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.